Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. We're taking a look back tonight, starting with the story of two Ontario brothers taken long ago from their home and have been finally reunited. It also puts an end to one Sixties Scoop survivor's incredible search for his 10 siblings. Here's Annette Francis.
We're on our way, and just up the street here by one of the restaurants, we'll make a left and then go down a couple of streets and make a right. And there he should be with his wife and his 3 daughters, I believe.
With 1,700 kilometers behind him, Rodney Howe's 50-year journey is coming to an end. Howe has come to London, Ontario from his home in Dryden to meet his younger brother, Andrew Dockstader. Dockstader is the 10th and final sibling of Howe's, who were all adopted out to families across Canada and the United States in the 1960s.
He's the last sibling that I know of that my mother had, and it's just part of closure, a promise I made to my mother that while I was viewing her body by myself, there was nobody else around. Everybody else had taken the time to do that. But I made a promise to my mother that I would continue to search for her long-lost son.
It's a connection that was made possible by Belinda Sayu and a healthy dose of luck. Sayu met with Dockstader's wife earlier this year, who casually mentioned that her husband had been adopted.
I said, what was his birth name? And his last name was Simard, and one of my longtime best friends is Christine Simard, who I am, still friends with on Facebook, and she lives in Thunder Bay. And so I reached out to her, and sure enough, Andrew is her cousin, who was the last sibling, I believe, out of this family of 9.
Sayo, who is also a survivor of the 60s Scoop, says it was spirit that brought them together, and it's a blessing to have helped the brothers to unite.
It's huge because I know that feeling. I know what it's like to be Andrew. That was me at one point. I had, it's hard. It's hard when you don't know who you are and where you're from.
That was last February, and tonight, in spite of COVID-19, Howe, along with Sayo, meet up once again to make the first face-to-face connection with Howe's long-lost brother.
Good. Hello, there he is. Oh, good to see you, brother.
Howe says he's prepared himself for this day and is ready to share as much as he can about their time at the children's home in Red Lake, Ontario, before their adoptions.
There was a children's home where they would bring kids that were born in the hospital, which was right across, actually, the grass, which wasn't very far away. And when babies were born, they often would take the children from their parents. I remember them bringing over a baby. Mm-hmm. And it was either you or David, but I know David stayed in the children's home, or brother David. But they brought over this baby, and it must have been you. And obviously they invited our other siblings within the room where you were brought to. We basically all gave you a kiss, and then all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, you were gone.
Dockstader says he's been anxious to actually see his brother. He says tonight's meeting sets out a new path forward.
Sort of like winning the lottery, but it's only like with the family. Because now they got the extended family and everybody's still alive, and so you don't have to, worry anymore.
Howe and Dockstader say they'll keep in touch. Once pandemic concerns are over, they plan to meet with their families in Red Lake, making a full circle to where their journeys began. Annette Francis, APTN National News, London, Ontario.
The longest-running residential school in Canada closed its doors in 1998. One of the survivors recently launched a website about the last generation of survivors. Priscilla Wolf has this story.
Terry Banjo is Saulteaux, Dakota, and Cree, and a member of Muskowgan Saulteaux Nation. On Orange Shirt Day, she launched her website about the LeBret Residential School in Saskatchewan. It focuses on the last generation of survivors. The project was part of her master's program with the University of Regina School of Journalism.
When I started out in this project, the reason I did it is because I'm the fourth generation in my family to attend residential school, and I'm the last.
LeBret Residential School operated for 114 years and closed its doors in 1998. When Banjo attended the school in 1990, it was no longer run by the church but by the Star Blanket Cree Nation. And she had a different experience than many of the generations before her.
But what I found in the stories or the narrative of Indian residential schools is all the trauma and the horror that took place. And that's all true and that all happened, but for me that wasn't my experience.
She realizes some survivors from her generation had bad experiences, but her story was positive.
I really tried to tell the story that I remember, which was the halls were filled with laughter. I basically grew up with friends who ended up being my family, and being surrounded by people who were positive influences in my life. And that's totally different from my parents' experience, but I thought it was important to share this part of the story because there's a whole generation of us who have not had our stories told.
One thing that stood out when she went back to the spot where the school stood is how her principal at the time helped shape her future by taking her grade 12 class to tour the University of Regina.
He asked us if we were serious about going to university. He'd pay for our application fee right there. And I think a few of us took him up on the offer. And yeah, he paid for it right there. And that's something a parent would do. And that's probably one of the best memories I have of my experience.
Banjo wants her fellow last generation of survivors to keep sending her stories and pictures from the LeBret Residential School to add to her website.
Maybe it would have took me a long time to find my way, but because I had somebody who was there and cared and did something for me when I was young, it really helped shape who I ultimately became.
The website can be found at minissa.ca. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Regina.
It's time for a quick break, but coming up, getting back to the basics, jewelry made from antlers.
For me, it's like having the spirit of the deer or the moose, like live on, instead of just sitting in a cabin somewhere.
Welcome back to a special edition of APTN National News. Tonight, we're taking another look at art stories from 2020. In Manitoba, a Métis artist is making a name for herself using animal antlers for art or jewelry. And as Brittany Hobson shows us, it started with a decades-old piece of history.
It takes a steady hand and plenty of concentration to cut through this antler. Skills Candace Lipashuk has honed during her years of practice. The Métis artist specializes in antler carving.
It's a very hard material. I break a lot of blades because they're really small. My bits get dull. So it's not like working with wood. It's a lot harder than that.
Lipashuk is one half of Fat Dog, an antler jewelry company she started with her dad. The name is shorthand for father-daughter. It started 5 years ago with a family heirloom.
He had kept a set of moose antlers for over 40 years, and he just decided to make a pair of earrings for me one day, a pair of feather earrings. And I got some compliments on them, and I already worked with wood, and I loved working with my hands, so I asked him to show me how it was done, and it became a passion after that.
Lipashuk uses deer, caribou, elk, and moose antlers to create intricate pieces like this feather.
So now what I'll do is I'll keep beveling out the rest like that and give the feather line some details.
Sometimes she's gifted materials to work with, such as these muskox antlers. This tree pendant is a product of those. Lipashuk says making jewelry connects her to something larger. With each piece comes a story.
For me, it's like having the spirit of the deer or the moose, like live on, instead of just sitting in a cabin somewhere. Like, we're not the type of people that hunt for trophies. We're the type of people that hunt for the food. We need to nourish ourselves, and it's our culture, and that's the way we are. So to use every part of the animal is hugely important.
Lipashuk relies on markets and workshops to sell her goods,
So in order to do that,
things that have been canceled in light of the pandemic. She says it's been tough losing out on face-to-face contact. Those moments are more than just business. They are opportunities to share and educate.
I've had a lot of comments like, wow, they're light, or it feels good, and I think maybe that's what it is. It's feel-good pieces, and, it being organic and part of Earth, that people have that grounding, without even realizing it.
Pandemic aside, the past 7 months haven't been wasted. Lipashuk finished building her studio and has tapped into another creative endeavor, working with tin found on her property to create these multimedia pieces. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, DeSalaberry.
After the success of her memoir Northern Wildflower in 2018, Denendeh author Catherine Lafferty's is back with a debut novel, which blends old world storytelling with a contemporary twist. Charlotte Mort Jacobs has this story.
Beautiful. What would it look like if Dene legends, vexatious shapeshifters, walked among us, disguised as humans? Ask Catherine Lafferty, or better yet, read about the unique perspective in her debut novel, Land, Water, Sky. The story goes back and forth through space and time, where a community is stalked by a dark presence, a group of teens face danger during a joyride, and an archaeological site holds a powerful secret.
I really wanted to attribute the story to a lot of our Dene storytelling, and I just want readers, especially young Indigenous readers, to feel very empowered when they're reading this, and to know that, these stories still do exist and they still very much ring true.
The story's inspired by visits to her grandmother's birthplace, Nietzsche Island, near Bushacombe, an hour northwest of Yellowknife. It's here as a teen where she'd participate in an archaeological project about the land and hear old world stories from elders. Carrying on those legends came with protocol and responsibility.
Umoja he was in the back of my mind when I wrote one of the characters that kind of reflects him in a way in a modern day time, like today. Like, what would Umoja be like today if he were to be alive? And so I really was careful not to take any stories that had intellectual knowledge from the communities.
There was a conflict between the animals and the people about what they wanted to be.
Lafferty consulted with traditional knowledge holders like John B. Zoe, who knew her grandmother and knows the land.
There always needs to be new tellers because times change, and so you got to tell it in such a way that it still has a form of mystery to it.
For Zoe, Land, Water, Sky is purposeful in its ability to teach a younger generation on legends like the Naga, which are still prevalent today.
When she started talking about the ancient conflicts, the brutality of that time, yes, that's the way life was, but it still resonates even till today.
When she randomly opened one of the journals, she came across a picture that made her stop cold. In the photo, a woman stood atop a small mound of snow. She was bundled in furs and carrying an empty cradle board on her back. There was something striking about the woman's expression that made DA look closer.
A virtual talk of the novel will take place October 15th. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
It's time for another break, and then we're off to Rankin Inlet, a community with hockey in its blood.
We take them to the gym and off-ice fitness testing and stuff, and we go to the gym, library for like literacy stuff, so it's like not only on-ice stuff.
Welcome back. We're taking a special look back at our stories from 2020. Many artists spend their spare time being creative during the pandemic. A museum in Alberta has been collecting some of that artwork done by those artists and is showcasing Indigenous culture, COVID-19 style. Tamara Pimentel brings us this story.
This is a space that connects people from all over the country, a record of different pandemic experiences expressed through traditional art. This collection of masks at the White Museum in Banff is called Breathe. It started off as a social media group when the world was hit with COVID-19.
When we first started this, I don't think we realized just how popular it would become, how explosive it would become. I mean, it's almost like the virus, itself, and that it's imitating life and the way life works.
Natalie Burton and Lisa Shepard are the two Métis artists who started Breathe to connect Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists.
There's a lot of healing that's going on in the creation of this artwork, and we're just continuing to do what we do to heal each other in the best way that we know how in this modern day, with what we're dealing with 21st century pandemic.
From seal skin to birch bark biting to moose hair tufting, the Breathe exhibit showcases traditional artwork that's been around for generations. But this is the first time the techniques are used to make these types of masks.
Masks aren't part of our culture historically. We beaded everything. We beaded leggings, moccasins, jackets, vests, hats. This is brand new. We've never had the occasion to bead a mask, but this is the time that we're living in now, and we're still here. The work that we're doing is still vital.
The Breathe exhibit will be opened at the White Museum until mid-January. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Banff.
Rankin Inlet, Nunavut is the second largest community in the territory. It also has a reputation for being just crazy about hockey. Our Kent Driscoll was recently there and found a hockey camp in the town's brand new rink. This from Rankin Inlet.
This is Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, located about an hour and a half by air west of Iqaluit. It is also the home to one of the most famous Inuit ever. His face is still on the welcome sign. Jordan Tutu, number 22 himself. This is Tutu's hometown. And here in Rankin Inlet, they take their hockey seriously. With a week off school for teachers to learn and no cases of COVID-19 in the territory, that means a week-long hockey camp at the town's very new $26 million arena. This annual kickoff camp has been going on for at least 5 years.
We started this to kind of not only develop our players, but have them have a really good start to the season. It's a way that we teach kids not only about the sport, but about being good teammates. It sets a foundation for the season. It's way more than hockey. It's more of a community pride thing.
The kids get a lot out of camp. So do the instructors.
Fun for me about it is that the kids, I just see their happiness and how much they enjoy the sport.
Hockey is the draw, but they manage to slide in some life skills along with the skating.
We take them to the gym and off-ice fitness testing and stuff, and we go to the gym, library for literacy stuff, so it's not only on-ice stuff.
Much of the gear is donated from kids who outgrew it, and the hockey program just handed out $10,000 worth of new gear free to the kids. Hockey isn't the goal. Here, hockey's being used to teach lessons.
They take it for what it is. It's a sport. It's fun. There's times when hockey's very competitive, and that will come in their later years. But this camp is about skill development, having a good time, learning how to be better players, but also better people.
Jordan Tutu isn't the only reason Rankin Inlet is known as a hockey town. The youth program turns out many skilled players with a huge participation rate. There is more to Rankin Inlet than hockey. But as this camp shows, there's more to hockey camp than just hockey, too. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Rankin Inlet.
People have been finding new activities and hobbies to keep busy during the COVID-19 pandemic. One man is using the extra time to teach others about Indigenous culture on the popular app TikTok.
We dance for all those who can't dance. We dance to heal and we dance to pray. This is who I am.
James Jones, better known by his TikTok handle Notorious Cree, started making videos in March when the thick of lockdowns were in effect. He has since grown a following of more than 600,000 people, and it's growing daily. He hopes his audience can learn something about Indigenous culture.
Danse, one of the most common questions I get asked is why I have long hair and why I wear my hair in braids. I was taught that as Indigenous people, our hair is an extension of our spirit, and to always braid my hair with positive thoughts so I can carry that energy with me throughout the day. It wasn't long ago my people were forced to cut their hair in residential schools, so I braid my hair to honor my ancestors.
Jones from Tall Cree First Nation in Alberta does everything from comedy sketches to Indigenous hoop dances and personal messages to share with his audience.
For so long, and even now today, our voices are not really heard on a lot of platforms. We're not really in any of the mainstream media a lot of times. So, a lot of people they kind of forget that Indigenous people are still here and that they're strong, and there's a lot of us. So I think it's important to share my culture.
As an influencer, Jones also hopes he can have an impact on the younger generation.
I have a lot of younger youth and stuff that follow me on TikTok, and I feel like it's important for them to know about their culture as well, that we have a beautiful, strong culture, and that they can be proud. If young boys want to grow out their hair, then they should, and they should be proud of it.
What started out as something to pass the time has turned into a lifestyle. Jones now has over 2 million followers on TikTok and over 43 million likes on his videos. And sticking with the app, now there's another way to get your Indigenous news coverage, and that's on TikTok. We've recently joined the popular video sharing platform. Take a look at our latest post.
CNN categorized a race of voters as something else during live coverage of the American election results. Indigenous people on either side of the medicine line took the label to mean them. The internet did the rest. But the reaction wasn't all satirical. Many took serious issue with the coverage, pointing out the colonial implications of the something else label, saying it erases and minimizes Indigenous people's impact on the political landscape of the United States. CNN told APTN News that the poor choice of words has since been corrected. Next time, they'll hopefully think of something else to use in their news graphics.
You can follow us on tiktok.com/@APTN News for more videos. That's been your look at APTN National News Christmas Eve edition. I'm Daryl Stranger. From all of us at APTN, have a safe and healthy holiday season.